In Frank Herbert's Dune, the Butlerian Jihad serves as the setting's perhaps most important world-building device. It is this event that drives the book's themes against the use of artificial intelligence, and its warnings about what a machine in the likeness of the human mind can do to humanity. Within Dune, the status quo of the universe was established as a direct result of the Jihad, with the event even being mentioned by our protagonists over 10,000 years later. The most important thing to remember, before I can explain what the Butlerian part of the name means, and most importantly why Herbert chose it, is this. Essentially, humanity over-relied on intelligent machines and the technocrats who had the knowledge to produce them, ultimately leading to its own enslavement and oppression on a galactic scale. Eventually, the ones we now know as the Butlerians organized a great revolt against the machines, a jihad that oversaw their destruction and the outlawing of any machine that functioned like the human mind. This single rule shaped the world of Dune, as now the galaxy had to rely on a substance like spice to fuel their navigators and thus connect humanity across the stars by traversing in speeds faster than light. This is because previously the job of the navigators was conducted by ultra-intelligent machines that had now been made blasphemy. It was this very thing that gave Paul the opportunity to wrestle control of the entire galaxy by threatening the destruction of spice, as without spice there would be no navigators, and without them the guild could no longer travel. Every single event can trace its origins back to the Butlerian Jihad, the war against the machines. Having explained that, what does Butlerian even mean, and why did Frank Herbert choose that name to begin with? The name of the Butlerian Jihad can trace its origins back to the real-life English author Samuel Butler, and perhaps his most famous work, Erewhon, published in 1872. Erewhon, which is nowhere spelled backwards, is a fictional country, one of the very first modern literary utopias. The book tells of the discovery of a land, largely based on the author's experiences in colonial New Zealand, in which, upon further inspection, something is not quite right. The people of Erewhon treat individuals who are sick like they are criminals, looking down on them and seeing them in a very negative light, even punishing them for their condition. Conversely, if you're a criminal in Erewhon, people treat you as if you were ill, with sympathy and a wish to help, socially but even on a medical level. Erewhonians are furthermore obsessed with beauty and physical appearance, and to them, almost nothing else matters when judging an individual, whether that be their personality, morality, or intelligence. And, speaking of intelligence, within the country of Erewhon, the highest and most prestigious educational institution is, of course, the College of Unreason, which specializes, as you may have guessed, in all things illogical and impractical. This, to the denizens of Erewhon, is the highest form of learning. In his work, Butler goes on to describe his fictional country's paradoxical economy, its unintelligible religion, and so-called musical banks that give out useless money, and much more, with the book serving as a one-to-one criticism and satirization of Victorian England and what Butler considered to be its shortcomings. Nonetheless, these things, while certainly interesting, are still not the most defining and famous characteristic of Erewhon, as well as the reason why Frank Herbert chose to honor Samuel Butler through Dune. Within the narrative, when Erewhon was discovered by our protagonist Higgs, he noted that the people of this land absolutely distrusted technology, viewing nearly all machines with suspicion. With the story, as well as the writing of the book itself, taking place in the middle to late 19th century at the height of Western industrialization, this is both surprising and not. Within Erewhon exists a text, a treatise of sorts, written by the scholars and intellectuals of that land, which states the arguments of why machines, except for the very bare minimum, are outlawed within Erewhon. That text is known as the Book of the Machines. The main premise of the book is the fear of the people of Erewhon that, like humans had done before, the machines would be able to, sometime in the future, evolve and gain consciousness. Their reasoning being that, whereas it took millions upon millions of years for humans to accomplish that feat, having evolved from a burning rock that the Earth used to be, the machines in the past few centuries, decades even, have evolved thousands of times faster. In reference to consciousness, it would be absurd to attempt to define such a mental state, or whatever it may be called, inasmuch as it must be something so foreign to man that his experience can give him no help towards conceiving its nature. But surely when we reflect upon the manifold phases of life and consciousness, which may have evolved already, it would be rash to say that no others can be developed, and that animal life is the end of all things. There was a time when fire was the end of all things, another when rocks and water were so. If you were to go back over 1 billion years and look at a rock within an endless field of magma, would you have imagined living creatures coming to be? And more so creatures with self-awareness, intelligence, and consciousness? Machines, on the other hand, are much more than a rock, can perform incredible things, and get better and better every single day on an exponential level. While they are basic steam engines today, who's to say they won't be something unfathomable tomorrow? There was a time when the Earth was to all appearance utterly destitute both of animal and vegetable life, and when, according to the opinion of our best philosophers, it was simply a hot round ball with a crust gradually cooling. Now, if a human being had existed while the Earth was in this state, and had been allowed to see it as though it were some other world with which he had no concern, and if at the same time he was entirely ignorant of all physical science, would he not have pronounced it impossible that creatures possessed of anything like consciousness should be evolved from the seeming cinder which he was beholding? Would he not have denied that it contained any potentiality of consciousness? Yet in the course of time, consciousness came. Is it not possible then that there may be even yet new channels dug out for consciousness, though we can detect no signs of them at present? Seeing how this was published in the 1870s, and within less than a century of publication we set foot on the moon, Samuel may have been onto something. And more so than this, when you consider what the Book of the Machines was truly about, which is artificial intelligence, machines in the likeness of the human mind, even if Butler himself had not yet seen it with his own eyes. The Book of the Machines goes on to argue that technology will become so advanced that humans will become completely dependent on it, and therefore enslaved to it. It would control every aspect of our lives, from manual labor to intellectual tasks, and if or when machines gained consciousness, they would enslave us. Enslave us not in the violent way that you might imagine, but as benevolent overlords that take care of our physical needs and complete material comfort in exchange for our servitude and assistance, a slavery of spirit. Herein lies our danger, for many seem inclined to acquiesce in so dishonorable a future. They say that although man should become to the machines what the horse and the dog are to us, yet that he will continue to exist and will probably be better off in a state of domestication under the beneficent rule of the machines than in his present wild condition. We treat our domestic animals with much kindness. We give them whatever we believe to be best for them, and there can be no doubt that our use of meat has increased their happiness rather than detracted from it. In like manner, there is a reason to hope that the machines will use us kindly, for their existence will be in a great measure dependent upon ours. They will rule us with a rod of iron, but they will not eat us. They will not only require our services in the reproduction and education of their young, but also in waiting upon them as servants, in gathering food for them and feeding them, in restoring them to health when they are sick, and in either burying their dead or working upon their deceased members into new forms of mechanical existence. Through the Book of the Machines, Butler warns humanity of its own hubris, in progress for the sake of progress, without a second thought. He criticizes the direction of Victorian industrialization while using the then recently published Darwinian theories on evolution, ultimately concluding that, in fact, machines can, do, and will evolve much faster than plants, animals, or humans did. To quote the man himself from within the Book of the Machines, "There is no security against the ultimate development of a mechanical consciousness in the fact of machines possessing little consciousness now. A mollusk has not much consciousness. Reflect upon the extraordinary advance which machines have made during the last few hundred years, and note how slowly the animal and vegetable kingdoms are advancing. The more highly organized machines are creatures not so much of yesterday as of the last 5 minutes, so to speak, in comparison with past time. Assume for the sake of argument that conscious beings have existed for some 20 million years. See what strides machines have made in the last 1,000. May not the world last 20 million years longer? If so, what will they not in the end become? Is it not safer to nip the mischief in the bud and to forbid them from further progress?" And later on he says, "But returning to the argument, I would repeat that I fear none of the existing machines. What I fear is the extraordinary rapidity with which they are becoming something very different to what they are at present. No class of beings have, in any time past, made so rapid a movement forward. should not that movement be jealously watched and checked while we can still check it? And is it not necessary for this end to destroy the more advanced of the machines which are in use present, though it is admitted that they are in themselves harmless? Having said this, the author of the treatise understands that it is unrealistic for all machines to be destroyed. He recognizes that machines come hand in hand with civilization, and that they are, from the simplest to the most complex, simply an extension of humanity. He even parallels them with actual limbs, that, in their case, are simply scattered about and picked up when useful. This is why not all machines have been destroyed within that country, but simply those whose potential of future evolution they recognize to be terrifying. Therefore, saying that we would rather be more disadvantaged now when it comes to our material comfort and would rather sacrifice a currently harmless machine than have our descendants bow down to its evolution in the future. Within the text, Butler also contemplates the definition of consciousness itself, as in, where did it start? What line was passed that, from then on, consciousness was achieved? And how do machines really compare to nature itself and how it functions, ultimately deciding that the two are not that dissimilar. In the end, for those familiar with Dune, I hope it now makes sense why Frank Herbert honored Samuel Butler in this way, and why it was his name that he chose for Dune's most important event. A man who, at a time when steam just moved stuff around, was able to predict, albeit in a satirical manner, the then unpredictable. A massive thank you to my channel members, and thank you very much for watching.